Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing some work on creating a parallax map. So the map you're seeing here is one that I just finished yesterday. It's a forest map for my newest dungeon in my game that I'm currently working on, Thrall. And today we're going to be starting the process on making a map just like this, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step, everything from conception to implementation. Um, so what we're actually going to do to start. There's a couple things we need to do, but first, let's actually open up our image editor. So I've got GIMP open here. I choose to use GIMP. You can use Photoshop if you want, but I prefer GIMP just because it's what I've been using for the last several years now. It's also totally free. I believe it's open source, so I think there's actually a community that provides updates, but regardless, it's a free image editor that is powerful enough for everything you'd need to do with parallax mapping. And this is what I choose to use. And so what I've got here, I have a template that I've already set up for this style of dungeon. And I'm going to run through kind of what I've got set up with this template already. This template will kind of change depending on what map you're making. It's not necessarily going to be all the same for every map. But what I've got here is two main layer groups. One is the group that we're actually going to be doing all of our work in, and I just label it as all, and that's where I put all the layers that are going to be visible. And the other group is our resource layer, and that's where we're going to be drawing everything from. Uh, Within the all layer, I've got kind of a temporary template. We're actually not going to be using that, but we're going to be replacing that. And one ground layer that all it is just a grass tile repeated throughout the map. That's all it is. And you'll see why that's necessary in a minute here. This is not strictly necessary for this style of parallax mapping, but it is necessary for this particular type of map. Since we're going to be doing a forest, there is an extra step that I've kind of added in. Um, Normally it would be something you could skip, but with this type of map, we're going to need that extra layer. As for the resource layers, I did this actually preemptively in a separate GIMP file that I labeled tree sources, ironically. And all this is a collection of trees from Celiana's uh, parallax tiles and ancient dungeon tiles that I resized. Well, I didn't resize, but I basically gave them boundaries that aligned to a 32 by 32 grid, and I adjusted the shadows. So I kind of took an eraser tool and I did some erasing and just kind of rounded them out so that the shadows are specifically only up to the top of the very bottom tile there, a 32 pixel high shadow. And I'll get into why that's important in the later episode. But that's really the only editing that I've done to these tiles. And I basically just went through the tile sets and cut out each individual tree and then pasted them in here and then arranged them by their height. So I've got tall trees and short trees here. You'll see why that's important in the next episode, but for now, that's basically all that is. The brush is basically everything that is a flower or a bush or a weed or something that you could potentially walk over, won't block your path, but still adds to the decoration of the map. And then obstacles is anything that would actually block the player path, whether it's a larger bush or a stump or a rock or a fallen log or something like that. So those are all the resources that I'm actually using for this template. That's all I have set up here. I don't have anything else set up. I guess I do have grid settings set up to 32 by 32. I am going to be using hotkeys, but I will try to remember to explain what tools I'm using as I'm using them. But for now, today all we're going to be doing is setting up the framework for this map. We're not actually going to be adding too much detail. It's just going to be setting up the template and setting things up so that in the next episode we can actually go into adding detail to the map. So how I start with that is I open up a blank project with RPG Maker VX, and I have some tile sets loaded in here. I'm using the Ancient Dungeons tile set, so I've made some modifications to it, but this is basically what I'm going to be using. And the first thing we want to do is generate a floor plan for our dungeon. We want to figure out where each room or section or clearing is going to be. And so how I do that is I actually use the random dungeon generator, and I just generate different floor plans until I find one that I like. We can do a little bit better than that. That's a little bit too connected. That's actually okay. I kind of like how there's like this one little isolated thing off the path, but I don't like how that's all connected there. And I can edit that, but we're going to try something different here. Let's go through a couple different generations and see if we find one that kind of speaks to us. That's all right. I am looking for something specific. Actually, this could work. This could be good. Yeah, I think we're going to use this. Okay, so this is basically going to be the floor plan for our dungeon. Obviously, it's not going to end up like this. This should end up looking something similar to this. Obviously a very different result, but you can kind of tell, like, okay, there's a clearing here, a clearing here, a clearing here, and they're kind of connected through paths. It's arranged sort of in a grid-like pattern, but that's actually not necessarily bad because it helps the player to figure out where they are. If you can kind of use X and Y coordinates in your head to be like, oh, I'm in the top left clearing, it helps the player get their bearings so they don't get lost in their dungeons as much. So having this kind of a grid-based layout is actually not necessarily a bad thing. It's just you don't want to end with this. And I talked about this in one of my previous videos, is that the random dungeon generator is actually not bad. It's just not a good end point. It's a good start point. So this is what we're going to start with. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this dirt tile and we're going to bucket fill the path. And then the walls we're actually going to replace with this grass tile. And what we're going to do, we're going to add a little bit of detail to the base in the editor before we import it into GIMP. And so what we're going to do, we're actually not going to erase any of the paths. That will come later. But what we're going to do, we're going to select one of these clearings that are, kind of branched off, and we're going to fill it with water. I don't want to just say choose this here because it's going to fill the whole map. So I just want actually something that's a little isolated. I could go with either this one or this one. And I think I'm going to go with that one. It's a little bit larger, and that'll mean less work for us further down the road. And we're going to just outline. We're going to fill in the border for this. This is a specific tile set. Obviously, this isn't something you would be using with the RTP. Oh, geez. Some of these tiles are a little bit not well connected. You can see there's a little bit of a hard edge there, but we're going to clean that up. It's not going to end up like that. And we'll add a little bit of variation to it as well. We don't necessarily want it to be perfectly square. So we're just going to do, oh, no. Hold on a sec. What did I do? There we go. I chose the wrong tile. That's what I did. There we go. I'll go with this one. Here we go. And so yeah, we're just going to put in the edge of our pond here. We'll go a little bit more. There we go. One there, one there, one there. And where's it, that one? Yeah, that's the right one. There we go, and there's our little pond. And now the other thing we're going to do is we're going to add a cliff face. So we are going to just do this a little bit randomly, and then we'll clean it up after. And so what I think I'd like to do, how are we going to do this? Let's make this whole section of the map up here a plateau. So we're going to take the pencil tool with the cliff face, and we're just going to go there we go. And what we'll probably end up doing actually is, see, this clearing connects all the way up to this one. What it will probably do is change that so that these clearings connect. There we go. And then that'll make the cliff face a little bit easier to edit in here. Okay, and yeah, it's obviously this isn't where we're going to finish. We're just going to start with that, and now let's add in. I actually do need to remove some of the path tiles here, but I'm going to remember that this one connects to that. Okay, and now we're going to add in the tops and bottoms of the cliff face, round out the corners. And this is basically the only thing we'll actually be doing in the editor. After this, we're going to import everything into GIMP, and we'll do everything else from the image editor. So parallax mapping, yeah, you're taking what you can do in the editor, and then whatever you can't, you're gonna fix up in a third-party software, and it's going to give us a lot more control over what we can do with this map. So I would kind of fast forward through this, but I'll be honest with you, I don't really record a lot of videos. I'm fairly new to any kind of editing software and recording in general. But you know what? You don't necessarily have to be good at something to try it. You just have to do it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying. Did I mess that up? I think I did. Yep, I sure did. So I'm just going to fix those corners. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I had some dirt tiles underneath those. Okay, so I'm just going to finish adding in the cliff face here. And all this is going to do is going to create like a bit of a plateau. That our player will have to navigate around. And what this is actually going to do is it's going to reduce the amount of work that we actually need to do in the long run, because it's going to reduce the number of trees that we need to place. And you will see why that's important, because I will be honest, this style of mapping is not that difficult to do, but it's very time consuming. And that's honestly probably one of the biggest reasons why most people won't do it. It's not because parallax mapping is hard. It's actually fairly easy once you get some practice. But even when you have practice, it takes a long time. On average, a map like this will take around 3 hours to do. And this is one map. In this dungeon, there's going to be 21 maps, which means we're looking at more than a full work week of time spent just developing maps. Not cutscenes, not event systems, not battles, not mechanics, just maps. Now, the reason why I have 20 maps, it's not a dungeon that has 20 rooms. In the game that I'm making, Thrall, it uses random dungeon generation, which is a system that I actually created myself for this engine. It wasn't like a plugin or a pre-made script or anything. And the way that it works is that it's not really random. It's not, I should say, it's not procedural generation, but it is random in the sense that every dungeon has a certain number of rooms. Let's say this dungeon has 7 floors, and it needs to randomly construct a dungeon out of those 7 floors. Well, for example, the Bloodstone Mine has 5 floors, but it has, if my computer overloads, it's a bit of a potato. It's not even going to respond. That's funny. So the Bloodstone Mine is a dungeon that has 5 floors that the player will go through on any given run through the dungeon. But in order to construct the dungeon, it takes 5 of 15 random rooms. Here we go. So these are all separate rooms that can be put in any random order to construct a 5-floor dungeon. That's just what I'm doing with this game. So with this here, I've got 4 floors already finished, or 4 rooms, I should say, for this forest dungeon. We're working on the 5th one today. And yeah, that's basically how this particular game constructs dungeons. So I've got to do about 20 of these maps, but I wanted to walk through how we're going to do one. So this is all we're going to do in the editor. That's it. We've got our floor plan. We've got like a little bit of a boundary. We've got a little pond. That's it. Now what we're going to do, we're going to zoom into a 1 by 1 scale. We're going to go into the very top left corner of the map, and we're going to take a screenshot. And then we're going to take that screenshot and we're going to take it into GIMP. And we're going to paste it as a new layer. I should show how I did that. So if you right click on the floating selection and go to new layer, it creates a new layer and adds it to the image. My hotkey for that is Shift Control N, which I don't know is default. I think I may have set that myself. And now we're going to take this pasted image, we're going to put it in the top left corner, and we're going to align it to the pixel. You can use the arrow keys to get it in place. We're going to take the square tool and select everything up to the border of that, copy it, cut it out, and paste it. And there we go. And now we're going to do that for every remaining section. I'm actually going to remove this layer from the old template. We don't need it anymore. And we're going to do that with every corner of the map. So we're going to take this, go over to the other corner, take a screenshot, paste it in. And we're going to see if I have any sort of video quality for this at all, because like I said, my computer is a potato, and it's probably not going to be very, it's probably not going to be doing very good. So it may actually, I may lose some fidelity from this. So to make sure I've got the right boundary, I'm actually going to hide the layer while keeping it active, and then select what's left, copy and paste to a new layer, and it should just show up like that. And we'll merge those layers together. So you can either right click merge down, or for me, Shift Control M. And next we're going to, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to place one tile, just one above the bottom of the map here. And now instead of scrolling down, because I won't get it pixel perfect, I'm going to press the down arrow key. And that will move it down a perfect 32 pixels. And I'm going to do that until that tile that I placed is hidden. And now I know that I'm aligned with where I left off over here. So I put that one layer down, and now I'm going to align the top corner of this to the bottom corner of where we just finished pasting the last layer. Good. And as you can see, that is lined up pretty much perfectly. So once again, I'm going to delete that layer, merge these down. I'm going to go back into the editor over here. Good. Okay, move this into the corner. And by doing that, there we go. Now we can just get the bottom. It ends up being in 6 sections. But if somebody knows an easier way to import images into GIMP like this, I would love to hear it. But this is what I've been doing for the last couple years now, and it works. It's a little bit tedious, but it does work. There we go. One more. We're going to go over here and print screen. Make sure you don't get the cursor in there, because otherwise that little white box will actually appear. So just move the mouse off to the side when you do that. Okay. And get that right in the corner. There we go. Hide the layer. Cut out the last section. Delete the old one, merge them together, and now we have, from the editor, this imported into GIMP. So we're going to close that. We don't need this anymore. And now everything we're going to be doing from here on out is going to be in GIMP, up to the implementation of the map itself. So what we're going to do, I'm going to cut out the parts of the map that I am actually going to use, which is basically going to be this pond and this cliff face. And those are the only things we're going to actually apply to the base layer here. The path we're not going to include. All that's there for is to kind of show us where we want our clearings to be. I think I got everything there. Let me just make sure. Yeah, that's good. We're going to turn on this grass layer now. And now we're going to cut these out, paste them. I missed one. I think it was this here. Let me just double check. Yep, I missed that. There we go. Okay, now we'll merge those together. There we go. And now if I hide the old layer, sorry, I think I just jarred the microphone a bit there. You can kind of see, okay, this is what's left. This was our base layer. We're going to hide that. So that's all we cut out basically. And now we're going to take that and we're going to merge these two together. And this is where we're actually going to do all our work. All this is for is to show where our clearings are going to be. So what we're going to do with that layer, we're going to set the opacity to 50 so we can kind of see through it. And now what we're going to do, we're going to create a new layer. It is filled with transparency. It's the full size of the map. By the way, the size that I did for this is 1600 by 1600, which is 50 by 50, as far as the 32 by 32 grid is concerned in RPG Maker VX. But it's filled with transparency. We're going to call this layer name grass. And now what we're going to do, I'm going to select the clone tool, this one here, and I'm going to, I have some patterns saved. I actually don't remember how to save patterns. I did these patterns years ago and I can't remember how to do it. But what you can do if you need to make a pattern is literally select a portion of the map and then hit Control C or copy. And then when you go to select the clone tool, you can actually select the copied source as your pattern. I have some saved, so I'm going to use those. And what we're going to do, we're going to take an acrylic number 5 brush. I'll actually just do this from scratch here. So acrylic number 5, we're going to set the size to 128. For the grass, I'm going to set the opacity to 100. And I'm going to set the spacing to 75. Normally with the acrylic number 5, it's set to, I think, 25. We'll actually just change the brush size and then change it back to see what the defaults are. Yeah, 256 and 25. So we're going to set that to 128 and a spacing of 75. And now on our grass layer, what we're going to do, I'm going to disable grid collision. My hotkey for that is Shift G. I think you can do that. Yeah, snap to grid here. So under the View tab, I'm going to disable grid collision so that it doesn't snap to the grid here. That's what I meant to say, grid snap. And I'm actually going to disable the grid altogether, just hide it. And on the grass layer, what we're going to do is we're going to fill in all of this area, ignoring the paths and obviously the cliff and the pond. And so with the spacing the way that it is, we should get kind of like an uneven, kind of patchy grass that should appear here. And we can just kind of click in some spaces to make it appear where we need to. It does not need to be perfect because we're dealing with a forest, and forests are nature, and nature isn't perfect. So we're going to fill all this in. There we go. It can be a little bit random, a little bit scattered, that's okay. The main point is we want to make sure that we're filling in all the areas that are not typically going to be walked on by people, without, completely filling it in entirely. You do want some kind of space between patches of grass, which is why we set the spacing so high. And I think that should be good. Yeah, that's good. Like you can see, we've got a little bit of grass cutting into the path here. That doesn't really matter, and you'll see why. But yeah, that looks pretty good for now. So we'll start with that. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to create another layer, and it's going to be the same settings as the grass layer, so we don't need to change anything except for the name. We're going to call it path. We're going to set that below the grass. We're going to go back to our clone tool, and this time we're going to choose a dirt source. And for this, if you really wanted to, you could actually just go back to this, set the opacity up to 100, turn on the grid. Oh, is this working? There. Oh, there we go. I see. And then copy that. Oh, come on now. There we go. And then copy that. And then if you go into the here, oh, look at that. You got a dirt source right there. I've been using this one, so I'm going to stay consistent with it. Yeah, there we go. We're going to set the opacity back down to 50, and we're actually going to hide this layer for the time being. We're not going to delete it yet. We'll get to that, but not right now. Turn off the grid and the snap. And now what we're going to do, we're going to keep the acrylic number 5 brush with 75 spacing. We're going to set the size down to 32, and the opacity we're going to turn down to 80%. And with the path, what we're going to do is everywhere where there was a clearing, like that, we're going to just kind of make our own little clearing. We're just going to kind of brush that in a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to draw kind of like a faint little path in between the clearings, but not like a fully connected path necessarily. Sometimes you can kind of make it a little bit angled. There we go. Just double check our reference here. Yeah, that's good. Oh, I forgot to do something, but that's okay. We can fix that. We get to learn together. Woohoo. There we go. Some clearings here. These are a bit larger, so we'll make these a little bit more distinct. Yeah, and then we're going to have a little bit of a winding path down there, a bit of a more faint path on this side. And now this is a massive clearing, so we're just going to do a great big circle, just kind of fill it in a patchy sort of style. We'll fill it in quite nicely here. My mouse has been acting up a bit. I think the battery might be about to die, so I might need to change that before the next episode. It should last for this one, though. It's not. And now that I've said that, just watch. It's going to die in the middle of this episode. We'll see. Okay, so I did forget one step, which was how do we get down the cliff? We need something that I forgot to do in the editor. So I will actually show you what that step is in the editor, but then I'll actually show you how we can fix it even in GIMP. And that is stairs. I actually selected and set this aside just so that I wouldn't have to forget how I did this. Yeah, little stone stairs. And so I'm gonna just use that as a reference, but I'm actually gonna draw from the tiles just to see what I did here. So let's see, I had those two, and I'm gonna put it right about there, and then we're gonna take these rounded tiles here and just do. Did I do that? No, I didn't. No. I don't even think I did that, really. It doesn't really matter because it's going to get fixed in the editor. There, and that's kind of how you get from one path to another. So we're going to put that in like that. That path would then extend down. Oh, not like that. You get the idea, though. So that's what I would do in the editor to add like a stair. So what we're actually going to do, I'm actually just going to make sure that I am aligned to the exact grid coordinates. Print that. I'm not going to bother saving. And now we're just going to paste that image in here. That's so ugly. Okay. And let's align that to the corner of the grid. And find the tiles that I need to copy. And it's those ones there. I need to turn on snap. There we go. And we're going to copy and paste that. And get rid of that. We don't need it anymore. And with this, we're going to, where was the path before? It's right there. We don't have to stick to that. We can kind of move it. So let's place it there. Yeah, I think that's good. And we may actually, because this path was supposed to go this way, we may actually just have it cut into this one instead. Yeah, maybe. We'll decide later. We don't have to decide right now. So there's that. I'm going to move that down here, and I'm going to copy that. Was there two? Yeah, there's two down here, which again, we don't have to stick with. That doesn't have to be a hard and fast thing. We might actually just make it one. Let me take a look. How... maybe I should add two. Well, I can add one there. That's not a problem. And then... let's see here. We'll merge that to the... oh, no, I merged that to the wrong layer. There we go. Merge that to that layer. And let's see. Let's do this. We're going to copy this, paste it, and move it over there. And then we'll take this, copy, paste, move it over there. And now we have two little staircases leading out of that clearing. Okay, there we go. That's the only step that I kind of missed with the editor, was making sure you could actually get down the cliff. Now, okay, where were we? Drawing the path. So let's get back to that. And let's just see where we were at. Yeah, okay. So from here, we're going to just kind of draw up to the stairs, but not on the stairs. And here's a clearing. We'll kind of make that go upwards a little bit and kind of slope it. There we go. And draw in a nice tiny little clearing here. They don't have to be perfect again, but just enough to kind of show where you can go and what's connected. It looks kind of ugly right now. It will get better, I promise. And yeah, okay, how do we want to do this one? I think I want to leave this clearing a little bit separate, but that could be a little bit tricky to... No, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into the grass tile here. We're going to select our eraser tool, and we're just going to erase a little bit of this. Because the opacity is a little bit low on my eraser, I'm going to have to do multiple brush strokes here, but yeah, I'll just erase a little bit of the grass there. Now we'll go back to our clone tool, back to the path layer, and we will just draw it straight down into this clearing instead of looping around to that side. This is going to be a nice large clearing. There we go, a little bit of a pear-shaped clearing in a way. We'll have the path kind of extend out and into just a bit of a smaller clearing that just kind of extends downward a little bit. There we go. And now, this one's a little bit interesting, so we're just going to kind of do a faint little path down to here into a small clearing. A little path, kind of a longer clearing, more like a wide path, really. And there we go. There's our floor plan for our dungeon. It looks a little chonky right now, and that's okay. It doesn't need to look perfect. What we can do now, though, since this is no longer necessary, we're going to delete this layer altogether. And there, our square dirt patches are now a little bit more natural looking. Still not great, but that's okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take the grass and the path and merge them to the base layer so that it's all one. And now, let me just make sure here. Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so. Oh, one thing we should do is let's save this not as the template. We don't want to overwrite that, but we're going to keep our naming convention consistent. So we're going to call it Lyre Forest 5. We're working on the new one today. And now, the only thing that I can think of that's left for setting up the base is we're going to add a little bit of texture to this map. So we're going to use our dodge and burn tool, this one here. Under tool options, I'm going to keep the acrylic number 5, spacing 75. Opacity on this one I've got set to 75. And the size I'm going to set to 128. Now, dodge and burn, you can kind of alternate between those with the control key. And I don't really know how to describe what this tool does. It kind of brightens or darkens certain parts of the map. I'm not really sure exactly how it does that. You kind of want to mess with the settings to see, maybe mess with the exposure a little bit. And I'm not an expert on these tools by any means, but what I find is that with an acrylic 5 brush, 75 spacing, 75 opacity, exposure I've got set to about 25 right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do burn first, so I'm going to hold control, and all we're going to do is we're going to brush over the entire map basically. So I'm going to hold control, and we're going to burn the map. It doesn't look like it's doing much right now, but you will see when we get the whole map done with both dodging and burning that what it kind of does to the texture of the map and then the uniformity of it. It just makes it a little bit more natural and look less like tiles and more like an actual image, if that makes sense. Okay, so that was one layer. Now we're going to let go of control. We're going to dodge the map, and we're going to do the same thing. And you can see a little bit more with this, a little bit more happening. The map gets noticeably brighter, but not consistently. It's kind of patchy in a way, and that's good. We want that. This actually, just doing this can tend to clean up a lot of the rough edges where maybe it looks like something cuts off a little bit. And I'll kind of give you an example of that once we're done with this entirely. Zoomed out, it doesn't look fantastic. Once you get zoomed in, it actually looks a lot better. So we're going to burn the map again one more time. Just go back and forth. Don't have to hit every single section. In fact, you don't necessarily want to. Just kind of want to go a sweeping motion back and forth across the map. Deepening those shadows a little bit and muting some of the lighter tones, but not necessarily. You don't necessarily want a smooth brush with this. That's why I went with the acrylic. And now one last time with the dodge. I like to start with the burn before I do the dodge, because I find that if I do the dodge first, it makes it a little bit too bright, and the burn doesn't have as much of an effect. That's just from my own kind of experimentation. I don't really know why it is that way. That's just what I've found. Let's just do one more across the middle there. There we go. Good. Okay, and that's basically all there is left. So we're going to zoom back into full scale, and you can kind of see that anywhere where there is these kind of grass tiles, it doesn't look like a tile anymore. It actually looks more like natural grass. And there's just kind of different lighting and shading across the map, almost like you're looking at it through a cloud cover or something, or it just looks a little bit more natural. I mean, just doing this alone can make your maps way more unique and authentic, because there's a lot more, I call it texture. I don't know what else to call it, but there's a lot more texture to the map. So I really like this tool. I really like using this kind of an effect on these maps. And now what I mean by cleaning up sharp edges is you can kind of tell, like right about here, where those two tiles meet, in the editor looked really, really harsh. But here it's just a little bit cleaner. It's still not perfect, but it's not really noticeable unless you're looking for it. At least that's what I find. So that little dodge and burn tool actually can kind of clean up a little bit of the rougher edges by adding just a little bit more diversity to the shading on the map. But anyway, I think that's pretty much all we need to do for the initial setup of this map. Next video, we're going to actually be putting in all the trees and brush and undergrowth to make it look like this. And that's probably going to be the longest video. That step alone will probably take us close to about 2 hours. Hopefully it won't take that long, because we did add, you can see this cliff face is only cutting through the middle. This one cuts all the way through here, so hopefully that'll limit the amount of trees we need to place, and it will hopefully speed things up a little bit, but we will see. In the meantime, that's pretty much it for this video. The only thing we're going to do, we're going to set up one little thing here. We're going to create a layer group. We're going to label this trees, and then we're going to create another layer group, and I'm just going to label it 1. And if you want to know why I did that, you'll have to watch the next video. But for now, we're going to save this project as is. And yeah, that's it for this one. So I will see you in the next video when we actually start to make this look more like a forest.